Welcome to the latest episode of our podcast series for financial advisors. Today's episode is Activating Plan B. Wirehouse Breakaways build a legacy family wealth office. It's a conversation with Trent Leyda, Managing Director and Chief Investment Officer, and Kate Campione, Executive Director and Senior Portfolio Manager at SpirePoint Private Client. I'm Louis Diamond, and this is the Diamond Podcast for financial advisors.
At Diamond Consultants, our mission is to help advisors live their best business life. We want every elite advisor to find exactly the right place for their business and their clients to thrive, whether it's at a wirehouse, a regional, boutique, or independent firm. As the industry's leading recruiters and consultants, we've transitioned more than $250 billion in assets under management in the past decade, and each year, 25% of transitioning advisors who manage $1 billion or more are our clients. If you'd like to talk, please feel free to give us a call at 908-879-1002. Are you a financial advisor who's curious about whether you're in the best place to serve clients, or if there might be a better way to optimize your business for the future? Should I Stay or Should I Go is a new book that serves as a self-guided journey, walking you through the key steps that Diamond Consultants takes with our advisor clients, whether considering change or not. Visit diamond-consultants.com/thebook to learn more.
This episode features a conversation with two advisors who broke away to launch their own independent firm. No doubt, it sounds like a story we've heard many times before, but this one has a few interesting twists. For instance, one of these two advisors spent a dozen years with the CIA before starting a career in wealth management. Yes, that CIA. The team I'm talking about is Trent Leyda and Kate Campione from SpirePoint Private Client. Trent was at Morgan when he met Kay, a former CIA field intelligence officer who left the agency and got her MBA in CFP. Together, they built a business managing some $1.4 billion in assets. They had a strong focus on managing family wealth, which often left them wondering if the firm they worked for was a firm they'd want to manage their own family's wealth and legacy. It was thoughts like these that inspired Trent to say, let's put a plan B together, just in case. That plan, which revolved around building an independent firm, was later put into action. And in October 2023, Trent, Kay, and 3 team members left to launch the RIA firm SpirePoint Private Client. Today, they created a firm that they would trust to manage their family's wealth and futures. In this episode, they talk about their goals in building a family wealth office. They share why they left Morgan to build an RIA and their choice to choose true independence to launch their firm and Goldman Sachs and Schwab as their custodians, as well as a perspective of why SpirePoint is the firm they choose for their family's wealth. Plus, we hear more about Kay's time in the CIA and much more. They have a great story, so let's get to it. Trent and Kay, thank you so much for both joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Louis.
Very good. We got a 2-for-1 special today, but I think we get 2 different perspectives and very important ones at that. So let's dive in. Maybe Trent, you can start and then Kay can go second. Tell us about your professional journeys. What brought you into the world of wealth management in the first place?
Oh, thanks, Louis. In college, I met a friend and he was in the wealth management business and seemed interesting to me. I went down a different path for a while, but ended up working in a family wealth office and spent some time learning about not just investment assets, all assets of a fairly large family. And then at one point decided to leave the family wealth office business and go out on my own and start my wealth management practice. And the journey has been wonderful because the wealth management business is always full of adventure and new things, and no day is ever the same. So found my way into the Wirehouse business for a while, spent years building a practice. And then about 8 years ago, met Kay and really wanted to focus on building a team rather than it being about one person, going back to the family wealth office business and trying to structure it something more about a group of people managing family assets rather than one person managing family assets. And it was a great partnership, and we've parlayed it into a wonderful RA business here at SpirePoint Private Client.
Thank you for sharing that. Kay, how about you?
Yeah, so my past is a little bit varied from most people who end up in wealth management. My first job out of college was in corporate banking, but then I got really bored of sitting in a cubicle from sunrise to sunset and decided to apply for a job with the clandestine service, the CIA. And I took that job and moved to DC and then moved overseas and lived in 4 different countries for 12 years and had 3 kids during that time frame and didn't want them to bounce around too much anymore. So we moved back to Florida, where my husband is from. And I started actually working with Northern Trust, which is a Chicago-based firm, and I'm from Chicago, so I was familiar with that name. And then moved from there to Merrill and then met Trent. And that's how I got into Morgan Stanley and eventually to start SpirePoint Private Client.
We've done a lot of episodes. I can't say I've found anyone that worked for the CIA as a precursor to wealth management. I have to ask, what did you take from your time at the CIA that you apply to the business? Like, how does it make you a better advisor, business leader?
Well, having lived in 4 different countries and 3 different continents during that time, you really get to see what matters to people the most. And you think that everybody is so different, people from different countries and different languages. But really, when it comes down to it, everyone is the same. They want to take care of themselves and their families and make sure that their future generations are taken care of. So there's really a common theme that runs across all humanity, I think, and it is to take care of your family. And how can you do that? I'm not in the health industry. I'm not a doctor. So that's one way people take care of themselves. But the other way is to take care of their finances, to make sure you have a place to live, food on the table. And I think that is one of the elements that came out of living in these various places and seeing how vastly different people on the outside really have very similar objectives. And then the other thing that I got out of it was working for what arguably is the biggest bureaucracy in the world. I really wanted to get away from that. And I got into the private sector specifically because I was tired of all the bureaucracy, only to land in corporations that were building up their bureaucracies. And I think that's part of, I'm sure we'll discuss this more, but part of the reason that we wanted to break away.
Right. Very true. I think regardless of how bureaucratic advisors think their firm is, it's probably still not as bureaucratic as the federal government.
Absolutely.
Probably a safe assumption. So I'd love to learn more about just the partnership dynamic between the two of you. So maybe let's talk about when you're at Morgan Stanley and then now at SpirePoint. What do you each focus on?
We focus on families together. And as we're working with the families and the dynamics come into play, Kay does a lot of the next generational educational with some of the clients' kids, or I'll work with one of the clients' children who may have something going on in their life. We take turns working on different relationships with clients and making sure that we're both talking to the same people and getting on the calls together with them, meeting in the meetings with them. So we share the relationships, and there's a lot that goes on in the day-to-day too of a very complicated family. So I think one thing that Kate runs is sort of operational things in our firm, and I run a lot of the relationship things in the firm, but they happen at the same time. So we come together in the meetings with the clients. We come together in the morning and decide here's the things that need to be done for the clients. And then I hand it off to Kay, and she comes back and helps keep me organized.
Is the dynamic of what you each focus on, is it different now that you're running an RIA versus being a team at Morgan Stanley?
Yeah, I think it is. I think the reason that our partnership has worked so well is we do have very different strengths. So Trent is the outside new business development, relationship management. Those are where his strengths lie. And I also do the relationship management part, but as far as new business, that's not where my strength lies. So I have really taken over the internal workings of the firm in terms of getting trades done, making sure forms are completed, making sure RMDs are completed. So we do have different focuses, but when it comes to the relationships, we do try to work on those relationships together. So I think having 2 different types of people has really added to what we do best. And it has changed from when we were with Morgan Stanley because we didn't have to run the business part of it, right? So we didn't have to worry about who's going to order the toilet paper and who's going to make sure that the electricity is working and the internet is up. So these are all things that are new. And we're also trying to grow our firm organically, of course, but also in terms of looking for other teams or advisors who fit into our ideal model. So that aspect of the business has really been something that Trent has taken over.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But a question for you, Trent. Let's rewind the tape here. So you spent many very successful years in the Wirehouse world. We'd love to just talk about the early days. What was the experience like, and how did you begin to build your business and start to scale it to where it is today?
I was fortunate enough to have some interaction with some fairly large families early on, and I knew the type of business I wanted to go after. So it was a little bit slower to start my business. I think everybody will tell you they knocked on doors or cold called in the beginning, and that's what you used to do. I did different variations of that. I was a solo practitioner in the beginning and going out and trying to learn the business, opening accounts, doing financial planning, helping individuals. And it's a long, slow road. It takes a while to build up a pretty large business, but you do get scale after time. And it occurred to me early on that I wanted to work with larger, fewer families rather than a mass number of families. There's nothing wrong with how you approach and the size of clients and what you do. It's just a choice you make. And I think every advisor finds their comfortable spot and they end up there. But in the beginning, you don't just start working with a fairly large, complicated families. It takes some time. Called all the ones that I knew right away, got nowhere, and had to learn the business of just really calling and taking on whatever you can the first 5 to 10 years in the business. And then after a while, you meet the right CPA, center of influence attorneys, estate planning attorneys that send you business because they see how you're doing work, and the business tends to snowball, but it takes a while to build that mass. And I think when you said, Lewis, early on, Wirehouse, I think the Wirehouse does train you to be pretty much solo about you, because everything's based on a number, everything's based on your production and what you do. And then when you realize you want to become some size of scale, you have to be more about a team and less about you. And I think that evolution takes some time. The faster people do it, the better they become, but not everybody gets there.
Well said. Okay, question for you. Let's talk a little bit about SpirePoint today. Can you give us a snapshot of what the firm looks like? How many people are on the team? Who your typical client is? What sets you apart? And any stats you want to share about the size and magnitude of the business?
Yeah, currently we have 3 advisors, Trent, myself, and our third partner, Jim Beindorf, who came to us having worked as a successful CPA for over a decade. So those are the 3 main advisors. And then we have Chief of Operations, who was a manager at Morgan Stanley. She managed many of the assistants, not just 1 or 2, but many assistants. And so she was at a high level in terms of managing HR issues, compliance issues, risk management, all of those things. And then we currently have 3 support staff. 2 of the support staff are quite experienced in servicing client requests for cash movements and things like that. And we recently hired a college graduate who is training to get his CFA and eventually take over a lot of the portfolio analysis, research functions, as well as step into some of the relationship management. So we're trying to groom him to be sort of the next generation of advisor for us. And that's something that we have planned going forward, is to continue to have succession plan within SpirePoint to have next generation advisors come on board.
Awesome. And maybe it's different today than when you're at Morgan Stanley, but how would you describe the value proposition to a client? What's the elevator pitch for SpirePoint?
There's a lot of similarities, but I think the real difference is we built SpirePoint because we wanted to run a business in the way that if we wanted to have our money managed for many generations, how would we approach and where would we want to have our money managed? Now, we looked at this and said, all right, if you are smart and you're thinking about where you want to have your money managed, you're probably not going to go to one bank or one firm. You're going to go and look and see who can be multi-custodial, which we are, and who can give you opinion and advice and actually send you somewhere else if you're not the right person. So it's nice to have sort of an objective view to be able to say, we can do this for you, but there's somebody else that can do this better. Here's where you should go. We could not do that where we were in the Wirehouse world. It was really not a favorable opinion to send people away. We send people away a lot. I think the real value is we're really here to try and bring you the best of what we can bring you. And if we are not the best, or if there's something that you should consider somewhere else, we're going to point you in that direction. And that's been refreshing. I think that, yes, the RA world has changed a lot. It's no longer in the shopping mall. I think the size and scale of the RA has become larger. The custodians have provided a lot more service for the clients, and the protection of assets are all there. The true value is absolute transparency, nothing hidden. We can bring that to the surface, and there is no really, we work for you. We don't work for somebody else or another entity that has another objective. Really, our goal is just to work for you and provide the best service we can for you and your family.
Well, what you said about we really stopped to think about how our family's wealth would want to be managed. And I'm paraphrasing, but I think it's such an interesting and cool way for any advisor to evaluate whether they feel like they're at the best firm. If ultimately you would trust your family's wealth and legacy and your kids and their kids' financial well-being to this firm, then I think there's a pretty good shot you're in the right place. But if there's any doubt about it, maybe that's a signal to consider something different, as the two of you did.
And we did. Actually, our kids are similar in age and getting older, and we're like, would we want our kids to work in this environment? My son came to me, should I come to work for you? And I was like, oh God, no. And I think everybody says that about their profession, by the way. I think that's factual. I know attorneys that don't want their kids to be attorneys, doctors that don't want their kids to be doctors, people that run their own business and want their kid to go work for someone else. I think that's a fact. But you should want your family members to work in the same organization as you. And you should create that organization where you would want those team members to be and where they can thrive.
You're talking to someone who's in a family business. It was all about finding my own path, having my own experience. But I think I agree with you. It's another really interesting objective lens to evaluate if you're in the right spot. Not just where would I like my family's wealth to be managed, but my kid and their kid to work with my team at this organization.
Absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about the size of the business? And is there a typical client that you tend to attract, whether a certain niche or clients above a certain amount of investable assets?
Yeah, we're struggling because everybody likes to talk about the size of their business. And we're talking, should we still, because we could get on the Barron's list, we could get on the Forbes list. Is that something that we want to focus on, or do we want to be more private? I think that the average client that we have are of taxable estates, sizable families, but it's not that we don't work with people that we like to work with that might be heading in that direction. So we used to sort of paint a box and say we only work with clients X of size. And I think now the answer is we would probably only work with clients that typically are referred to us or can be referred by somebody, a client or a center of influence. The size of our business today compared to last week is different. That's a fact. The market is changing. So haven't looked at it in a few days. Don't look at it that way. We run a similar size business to what we ran before. We're growing. We're getting ready to come out with our ADV here. So I don't really want to go into the specific numbers, but we're starting to grow at a nice clip and taking on, like I said, really taxable estates, which today that's probably a lot of $30 million families. That doesn't mean we don't have $5 million families. Doesn't mean we don't have $3 million friends that we're helping to evaluate where they're going to be. And private equity is buying everybody today. So we're trying to help people that are selling their firms all the time right now. It seems to be something that we're doing. That's the space we're in. And we have a great group of clients in there. And we're not trying to open up a mass amount of clients. We're just trying to open up a good group of families that we can work with, that we can help for multiple generations.
I respect the humility because I know you are in this industry, whether it's Barron's or Forbes or being the top advisor in the market or getting a high number on your ADV is important to some folks. But I think it says a lot about you and the culture and, again, your humility to want to keep that private, which I respect. Okay, a quick question for you here. So your team was, when you're at Morgan Stanley, you were consistently on Barron's and Forbes and clearly were very successful. So many would say that you had a pretty good thing going. I'm sure it made plenty of money, were able to serve clients very well, provided a great experience, were at a great firm. So what motivated you all to start exploring and thinking about life outside of the Wirehouse world?
Well, I think the big impetus for me was to create something that would last beyond my career or Trent's career. When you get into the later years of your career, places like big wirehouses start to look at you and say, well, when you retire, we're going to have these other people take over your clients. And it's not just one group. They're going to take your clients and scatter them all over the place. That idea was very unappealing to us because if you spend decades, like Trent has, creating these relationships and nurturing them, the idea that once you decide you can't work full time anymore, those clients get dispersed to people that they don't really know, it's not an attractive thing to think about. So we wanted to start a firm where we could continue to take care of our clients and also create a place where, like Trent said, our kids might want to work or our partners' kids might want to work, where we could even help the community in terms of hiring college kids who need an internship and need a good experience. Now we're in a position to offer that kind of thing to the community that we couldn't do before. So there's a lot of just doing something that's beyond just one individual person's career path.
Trent, anything to add?
I think Kay's hitting it right on the head that succession planning is important, and not succession of me, but succession of clients' lives and businesses. If not, I would have just taken a check to go somewhere else, and it would have been about me, and we would have taken a check and forget about the clients. But for us, it does. The clients really do matter a lot, and I think that adding the succession plan is important. And it's not our lives that continue, but it's also our clients' lives. And I looked at the models that were available in the retirement plans at the firms, and to me, it seemed to be, it worked for them, but I don't know if it works long-term for the clients. And I'm sure that it does in some situations, but to me, it wasn't very concrete and well laid out in a way that I was comfortable with. And I'm always trying to put myself in my client's shoes. It's not how I would really want to see my client's future handled. So that's why we started looking around and ended up at SpirePoint Private Client.
And was this something you had been thinking about for a long time, or was there a specific catalyst moment or kick in the rear?
No, there was no real catalyst moment. I think we said, hey, let's just have a plan B in place, right? What's it like out there? What's available? We knew it was available from the Wirehouse world, and we weren't going to go to a bank. That didn't seem to make sense. So what would it be like to set up a small multifamily office situation? What would that look like? Let's just take a look at it. We didn't really plan on doing it. What's intriguing about it? What's out there? What's available in the world? And if I'm a client looking around, where would I look? And I had a few clients that are pretty smart. They're like, look, if we weren't with you, we would be going to an RIA, and here's why. And I started inquiring as to what that meant, what's available. Then you start looking at the many resources that's out there in the world that you don't really recognize because all you know is what's at your firm. We started saying, look, let's just have a backup plan. Who knows what's going to happen? We're in a small town and firms make decisions, and our office was not huge. And, what if they close our office down someday? Even though we're big, then we'd have to drive an hour north or an hour south. Let's just have a backup plan. Once we started looking at the backup plan, it started looking pretty good. And then we had to ask ourselves, why wouldn't we do this? What's stopping us from doing this?
I love that. A lot of our work is helping advisors formulate a plan B. And in many cases, it stays a plan B forever, and they take their firm's retiring advisor program and the like. But what I've found is when advisors really take the time to understand all the different business models, even outside of the independent world, they oftentimes surprise themselves that once you see something, you can't unsee it. And in your case, you saw a better mousetrap, a better way to serve clients, a better way to serve your family's wealth, to create an environment that made sense to potentially bring your kids in one day. So I think it's really cool when advisors start strategically, they're really working on the business, just thinking about a plan B. It's not like they have a gun to their head or have to move, where it's very thoughtful. And you come to it on your own by being objective and taking in all the information that you had at your disposal.
Yeah.
How did the two of you go about getting educated on the industry overall. A lot of things had changed since you joined Morgan Stanley, and the RIA world, the independent world, is a whole other anthology of information and so many different options. So how'd you go about getting your bearings and really understanding the right path for you?
I think in this case, Trent did a lot of the research up front. Yeah, he did most of the research up front, and he was actually more involved in that initial research phase. And he brought me into it in the later phases when things were starting to look like maybe we do need to really explore these other options. What I found is that it's hard to serve two bosses. We were serving our firm and we were serving our clients at the same time. For a while, those two things were aligned pretty well. And then as that alignment started to spread out more and more, it just became more and more difficult to say that we were acting as fiduciaries and doing everything that we thought was right by our clients and nobody else. And so I think that if there was an impetus, it was that kind of deviation of the two bosses that we serve that we felt like, okay, we really need to have a backup plan and make sure that we understand exactly what that entails.
And Trent, how about you? So if you're the one who took the reins of exploring, getting educated, what did you do to prepare yourself?
Yeah, I reached out to the custodians and started through the custodians because they have all the relationships. And I ended up talking to someone at Charles Schwab. They introduced me to a few different aggregators. I got on the phone with the aggregators and people that had helped people put RAs together. And then I asked them for people that had just done it. And then I just really got on this exploratory mission and got on calls every night. Like, can I get on a call with you next week? I was on 2-3 calls a week. And then we went and visited a few of the aggregators and then got introduced to a different custodian. Ended up talking to Schwab, Goldman, and Fidelity. We currently use Schwab and Goldman. And they introduced us to people that were successful at it. And that's what I was wanting to find and talk to people that were not just opening a small practice, that were opening a practice of decent size. And there are successful people doing this. And the same message is you'll hear over and over as you talk to people. You talk to us, you talk to other advisors, is wish we'd have done it sooner. It's possible. This business has a lot to offer. And there's no shortage of services, investments, products, or anything that you need for your clients. And the business model is totally possible.
Trent, let me ask you, most Wirehouse teams we work with will opt for, we call it supported independence. So joining a platform, we called it an aggregator, because there's just a lot that goes into starting an RIA, doing under the cover of darkness. We don't know what we don't know, et cetera. So if those options were known to you and you made obviously a strategic decision to build the RIA on your own, what led you to that? Was it financially motivated? Was it control? Was it, we think we can build this better? What in your mind led you to the own RIA path?
Yeah, there's some great platforms out there and we like them. We just felt that they were trying to sell all the cable channels. When you're at a firm, like we don't do structured investments, we don't do a lot of different investment products that are pushed upon us. What I noticed at the aggregators is you use this kind of, I like to watch ESPN and HBO. Like I don't want all the cable channels, and the aggregators, you got everything. And they were charging significantly for that. And I think there's value to what they have. We found true independence to be what we needed to get our structure up and running. And now Sanctuary's taken on true independence. So we have a great relationship with Sanctuary, who helps run our back office. So really, we depended on true independence to help us set up the infrastructure of our firm, which is the operation, the compliance, because I didn't want to really be a compliance officer. And our background has allowed us to become that. But we found that the structure was available and there were people out there that you could pay and you didn't have to go with some big aggregator who was really, my experience and my look at these aggregators is they're really, a lot of them are recreating the Wirehouse model and calling it independent. That's not that it's not anything wrong with that, but we looked at a few and we're like, wow, that sounds great, but it's a bunch of Wirehouse guys that are creating another Wirehouse that's eventually going to be a Wirehouse. And once you look at private equity today and the future of this business, I think private equity is jumping into this industry in every direction. And is that really the best for your clients long term? Is that going to be the best fiduciary choice to make? I wanted to have control I wanted to have 100% control. I didn't want to have private equity telling me which direction to run the business for my clients. If I was going to go independent, it was going to be us going independent on our own, running the business for our clients, and no one else telling us how to do that for our clients.
So in the end, you do outsource certain functions to a platform. Was True Independence, and now Sanctuary bought them. Sounds like you have your own RIA. SpirePoint's its own SEC registered RIA, and makes sense. And why was it important to you to have your own RIA versus becoming an IAR of an RIA? Was it because of the potential disruption from private equity, or was it something else?
Yeah, I think it was just control, us having control. We came from a world where we had no control at all. We didn't want to go to a world where all of a sudden, okay, we're independent, but we have other people controlling our business and making decisions for us. We wanted to make the decisions on our own. And we took the hardest path you could take, but it's also the right path and the best path, not just for us, remember, is for our clients. So if not many people say, hey, we're doing this truly for our clients, I wanted my clients to be in the best position one.
And Kay, now that you're SpirePoint, where have you personally seen the biggest impact or biggest change for clients?
I think the biggest impact really is that we're not having to choose between following some set of arbitrary rules put upon us versus thinking about what is the best solution for the client. So in the past, if a client came to me and said, I really need to buy some real estate here and I don't know anybody there, what can you suggest? In the past, there were some restrictions on what we could refer to or what kind of information we could give to our clients. And now we don't have that. We don't have that restriction. And so it opens up the whole new world and it forces us to be better and more competent on our clients' behalf because the entire world is open to us and we can suggest or we can recommend things that have nothing to do with our firm in many cases, but have everything to do with our clients' value and quality of life. So I think that is the biggest strength that we bring now to our clients. They know full on that we're not beholden to anybody but them.
This is a question for either of you, whoever wants to take it. But when you set up SpirePoint, it was a non-protocol transition from Morgan Stanley. So obviously you had to be a little bit more careful and scripted in what you said to clients. But let's move past the initial outreach. As you started to engage with clients and position SpirePoint, et cetera, how did clients respond? Did you have any people that stayed behind, that didn't really understand it, that said, I'm really most comfortable with my assets with a major Fortune 500 company versus with your firm?
Yeah, I mean, I think we followed protocol. We could just announce. We couldn't solicit, which was always an interesting conversation. I left and here's where I am. Most people were like, great, when are we moving? And I would say that was probably 80% of it, and another 10% have come along, probably the number. But there were a few that actually, one that surprised Kay and I, were like, wow, he ran his own small business his whole career and fought against big corporations, but he stayed behind. I was like, that one mystifies me because he built his business and fighting the big corporations, but he still wanted to stay behind. He didn't understand. And look, we couldn't call and reach out to him for a year. We followed the protocol. Very small percentage of people stayed behind, but people did stay behind. And our thought process of that is, hey, if they don't see the value in who we are and don't realize the level of service we offer over time, then maybe they're not a good fit. So we just had to take the high road, move on. And then looking back at some of the handful of clients that didn't come, there are a couple that I'd like to come along, some that in the long run, we're glad a couple of them didn't come along, but we have brought a successful enough number along that we were not stressed over it.
Things happen for a reason. And in every transition I've been a part of, there's surprises going both ways. There's the client you never thought was going to come. And then there's the client or two that's an absolute shocker. And it's all kind of just got to take it in stride. You can't predict it. You can't control it. All you can do is share your truth and position why you think it makes sense for them. But if they're not looking to be swayed, then there's other clients that you can make an impact on.
Yeah, I found it to be really humbling to see which clients. There were a few clients we had just onboarded, literally like in the last 2 weeks before we departed. And I thought for sure, there's no way we're going to put this person through this pain twice in 1 month and he's going to want to do this. But he was one of the first ones who called us and said, I'm going where you guys are going. I'm not here for Morgan Stanley or any other firm. I'm here for you guys. And so I think that kind of reaction from a lot of our clients was really humbling for us because we didn't necessarily expect that. And on the other side, there were some clients who we did have to leave behind because change is hard for people, and some of the people just were not up for that kind of change. We have a lot of retirees. We live in Florida, so older people who have gotten used to certain things, they are just averse to change, which I understand.
Yep, makes sense. So, question for either one of you again. We'll make it a grab bag. As business owners, what's been your recipe for success so far? Are there decisions or habits or philosophies that you've seen have made the biggest difference and impact on your business?
Right away, I went out and hired coaches for our team, and we use a coach, and we're going through a partnership coaching right now. And I think that some of the best athletes in the world use coaches. I think that I'm grumbling like, oh my gosh, I can't believe the coaching call because it's coming up. We have one this week, and I'm like, I got to get some work done for it. But it's effective. We get things done. We have to put our values together, and it allows us time to step back and work on the business rather than working in it, because it's easy to work in the business and not take a step back and take a look at the business. So I think that's probably one of the best things I would recommend that people do. And I think you should have a coach anyway, no matter what you do. But I think as you progress forward, things are always changing and adapting. And we also put together a who's going to go to what conference schedule, and we're making sure that we're out there, we're going to the conferences, we're on top of having a learning program, not just for the partners, but for everyone on our team, trying to push not just ourselves, but push ourselves together as a team to being better. And I think that putting that in place right away was probably one of the better things that we've done. Kay may have an opposite opinion to that, or maybe you can add to that.
No, I begrudgingly admit that the coaching has been good.
Yeah.
It's not a painless process. I think the whole thing about going independent, like you've already mentioned, everybody looks back and says, wish I could have done it earlier. I don't know what held me back. It was the best thing I ever did. And I would say some of that is true for me and some of that is not. I think we did it at the right time. We had the right people in place to do it at that time. It wasn't a matter of the sooner the better, and it wasn't painless. And running a business, in addition to working in the business, definitely a big adjustment for many of us. It's definitely not been painless, but it has been worth it because we have been able to directly impact lives of our staff, lives of our clients, lives of our families, much more directly than we were before.
Do you find the two of you, are you working more than you were when you were in the Wirehouse world?
Trent works odd hours. He doesn't work 8 to 5. He's out there on weekends and early mornings and nights thinking about this. And then sometimes in the middle of the day, he's off doing something that may not appear to be related to the business, but it really is. Playing golf is definitely part of the business, especially if you live in Florida. So I don't know that if it's working more, but I think Trent's work has changed. I'll let him speak for himself, but I think the type of work he's doing or the type of work that he's focusing on has shifted a lot more than it has for me, because I'm continuing to stay more focused on making sure that things in the office, in the business, is running smoothly while he's off generating new ideas and coming up with the next strategy.
I just enjoy what I do more now, so it's hard to say. I'm excited to wake up in the morning. I'm excited to come to work and do what I do. I wasn't excited before. It became a job for me, and now it's something that I really enjoy. I think our clients recognize that I like what I do. My family recognizes what I like to do. Our team members do. So I really enjoy the time. Golf is an event. If I do retire ever, I will not golf when I retire. So it is work, and I'm not doing it with my family members. So I always say, if I'm not doing it with my family, there's some work involved in it. But I think that the day-to-day is a lot more enjoyable.
How about any big surprises, positive or negative? We talked a little bit about client reactions, but anything operationally, just looking back from the transition time that really surprised you, again, positively or negatively? And maybe we'll ask Kay this question.
Yeah, so on a positive note, based on everything I'd heard from other people's experience going independent, I thought that it was going to be just nonstop, 16-hour days and it's going to be so much work and so much hassle. What I found surprising on the good side was, yes, it was painful for 3 months. And then we started seeing the fruits of our labor almost immediately. And everybody was just so much more energized. And that was a really positive surprise for me.
How about you, Trent? Anything else to add?
I agree with that. And I think one of the most, I can't think of many negatives other than I wish I did it sooner, of course, but I think the most positive is just watching how happy people are to like, hey, we can make this decision. We can do this now. We can make an impact. We've started a SpirePoint monthly charity thing that we're doing. Like we can actually, we don't have the immediacy of how we can help the community and get business done. I thought I was going to work tremendous amount of hours too. I'm pleasantly surprised at how extra time I have to put into working on any of the custodial things that I thought might come into play. It's right. There's people that do those things. Just like at the firms, there's people that do those things. There's people in the world that take care of the business for us. We have an accountant that does our accounting. We have somebody that manages the building. We have people running parts of the business that I thought we were going to have to spend a lot of time on. And I'm pleasantly surprised at how little time I spend doing any of that stuff.
That's great to hear. And is there anything that you've learned since going independent that you wish you knew earlier, other than I wish I did this sooner?
I wish I knew that there's the amount of investments and available investments that are available to clients that are out there in the world. And I just assumed there was what was available for thousands and thousands of advisors, but there are great alternative investments and access to them. There's great research, not just at one firm. You can look at research from different firms, and everything's available out in this world that I thought was only available, that was just specialized and available to large firms. But you have access to a whole world of investments and available investments. It's oftentimes smaller, more tailored investments that you can't get. And there's a lot of ways to get due diligence to help you filter through those investments to bring the best things to your clients. And I was a little worried about that. And there's a whole industry out here that's available to help deal with getting the right investment vehicles in place.
Yeah, I think it's oftentimes misunderstood by many advisors, and probably rightfully so, that everything that an independent business has to do has to fall to their shoulders or their teams. But I think that the best advisors approach the independent world as, okay, we're going to be managing vendors now, and we can really outsource anything and everything that we want to. And you get to decide if the cost is worth it. To use your cable analogy from earlier, Trent, like, do you want every channel or do you only want a couple? And you get to really make the decision on, do you want to invest in the business? Do you want to take more income? Do you want to pay to outsource to make your life easier? But I haven't really found a type of thing or a scenario that couldn't be outsourced or you couldn't hire some help in order to handle.
Right.
Okay, with this, the same question. Was your big learning or something you wish you knew sooner? Was it similar to Trent's, or do you have a different perspective?
Well, it is similar to trust, but I think one thing that nowadays I've come to realize is now that we are independent, we have the opportunity to seek out all these new technologies that are coming up, all this AI technology that we didn't have access to before and may not have had access to, because getting something like that approved through a big wirehouse means waiting and waiting for someone else to make that decision for you. And now we're out there exploring new technologies to improve our efficiency, to improve our client experience. And those are things that we couldn't do before. So it's a lot more exciting to come into work every day and know, hey, there's this new technology that allows you to do X, Y, and Z for your clients and save you 4 hours out of your day. And we can implement that today if we decide to do that. And so those kinds of opportunities are what keeps being independent much more attractive and a lot more fun than just going into work every day and putting in your 8 hours.
I agree with that perspective. I love that. 2 more questions and then we'll wrap. For either one of you, I think Kay, let's direct it to you because you mentioned this earlier, that part of the strategy for growing SpirePoint isn't just organic, but also thinking about inorganic means, meaning acquiring or trying to recruit experienced advisors who can bring their clients with them. What's the pitch, or what would be the rationale for someone to pick you over doing their own RIA or selling to another firm or joining any type of other organization?
Well, as an advisor or a group of advisors who are feeling the same frustrations that we were feeling, and that is the lack of control, the lack of a clear succession plan, and the desire to create something that lives beyond their individual careers, going independent is the answer. And coming with us rather than someplace that has, like Trent called them, the aggregators, they want a piece of your business. They want to buy into your business. That's not necessarily what we're offering. We're offering that option if someone wants it, but we're also offering the option of becoming your own independent firm, but with our support, meaning we don't have to own a part of your business. You can be your own business owner, but just be affiliated with us. And we've gone through this process and we understand how to do a transition now. We've kicked the tires and gone through the kinks. We have someone on our staff who really has specialized in transitions while she was at the Wirehouse and now with us. So we do offer that expertise as well. And so I think it's the level of flexibility that we can offer a group of advisors. But, we're not looking to just add advisors for the sake of adding people. We really want to find people that share the same values, that share the same frustrations that we were experiencing, and try to solve for that problem for them like we did for ourselves.
I like that. Very compelling. It's like, why recreate the mousetrap if there's one that you can latch onto and save yourself some time and brain damage?
Brain damage for sure.
Well, last question here. Let's toss it to both of you. What's one piece of parting advice you'd give to a Wirehouse advisor, old colleagues, et cetera, who are curious about what's going on, but aren't really sure about making a transition?
I think I would have a conversation with your firm, Lewis. I listen to advisors all the time and say, hey, I give business owners advice, but why don't you give yourself some advice and go out and take a look and see what's available? It's because you don't know what's out there until you look. And I really think that understanding what's available in the world, so you're doing a disservice to your family if you're not taking a look to see what's available out there in the world. And there are professionals that can help you. You can reach out to us. We can send you to other friends. We might not be the place for you, but you should absolutely take the time for your family and for your clients to go out and take a look at what's available in the world. It'd be pretty hard for you to not to look at this and say, right, that's the best place to run business. That's where I want to run my business. But maybe you do want to work for one of your competitors someday. Well, you're going to have to do something or don't do anything. Look, there's nothing wrong with being in those firms. Like you said, you can sit around, Lewis, and take the retirement plan. And I think that's sort of not the best road. And you're not bringing the best of you to the world that you can, but that's a choice that people make. But I would definitely talk to Diamond Consulting, talk to a few of the custodians, talk to your competitors, know what's going on in the world and explore what's available.
Yeah, I would just add to that every option I think is available. Every level of independence that you feel comfortable with, you could find a solution out there that meets your needs. It's just a matter of figuring out what that is for you. It could be different for everybody. Not everybody is in a position to have a CPA on board and someone who's done 100 transitions in the past. So if you don't have those resources and you need more support, then there's always that option out there. It's just a matter of taking that time to do the research.
Yeah, so it's almost like if you do some soul searching and figure out that in your case, independence is right for you, don't let the fear of the unknown or the overwhelm or the perceived amount of work stop you. There's likely someone or some entity that can help you get across the finish line.
Yeah.
So I love that. Well, Kay and Trent, I really appreciate your time today. The 2-for-1 special and just your candid perspectives on everything. To me, what stuck with me most was the concept of thinking about your firm and saying, is this a firm that I would want to manage my family's wealth? And can I see a family member coming into this firm and working for it? I think that the biggest message is if you feel a misalignment between those two things, then it's probably worth it to create the plan B. But sometimes the plan B will lead to action. So,
That's right.
So buyer beware.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Thank you both.
Thank you, Lewis.
Thank you.
As a financial advisor, you hold yourself to the highest standards of integrity, honesty, and credibility. You are successful because you take your professional responsibilities seriously and are dedicated to your clients. But are you living your best business life? Are your goals aligned with your firm's, or could a better option exist? Should I Stay or Should I Go is a book written with you in mind. It's a self-guided journey that walks you through the key steps that we take with our advisor clients. This strategic thought process and roadmap to professional self-discovery is designed to help you ask the right questions and think critically and objectively, whether you're considering change or not. Learn how to get your copy at diamond-consultants.com/thebook.